First Contact Protocol. The observation deck of Horizon Prime stretched before Dr. Aya Osman like a window into infinity, stars scattered across the darkness like scattered diamonds on velvet. She pressed her palm against the cool transparency, watching the distant nebula paint purple and blue streaks across space. 3 months aboard the station had not diminished her wonder at the view, though the isolation had begun to wear on her spirit. Dr. Osman, a voice crackled through her calm link, the Vexery delegation has arrived. Captain Chen requests your presence in Bay 7. Aya's heart quickened with anticipation. She'd spent the last year preparing for this moment, learning the Vexery language from fragments of transmissions, studying what little humanity knew about their culture. As the station's lead xenolinguist, she would be the primary liaison between the two species. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and the weight of responsibility settled across her shoulders like a familiar coat. Bay 7 hummed with activity when she arrived. Engineers and diplomats clustered in small groups, their voices hushed with excitement and nervousness. Captain Chen stood near the airlock, his gray uniform crisp and formal. He nodded when he saw Aya approaching. "They're about to disembark," he said quietly, "remember, minimal physical contact unless they initiate. We don't want any cultural missteps on day 1. Aya nodded, reviewing everything she'd memorized about Vexery customs. Her palms felt damp inside her gloves. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and the delegation emerged. There were 4 of them, moving with fluid grace that made human movement seem awkward by comparison. Their skin held the deep purple shade of twilight, and their features were similar enough to human to create recognition, but different enough to remind everyone they were truly alien. Intricate patterns, like silver filigree, traced across their visible skin, shifting subtly as they moved. But it was the one in front who captured Aya's complete attention. She stood slightly taller than her companions, her bearing radiating quiet authority. The silver patterns on her skin seemed more pronounced, flowing across her neck and down her arms in designs that resembled flowing water. Her eyes, large and luminous, held an intelligence that was immediately apparent. When those eyes found Aya across the bay, something shifted in the air between them. Captain Chen stepped forward, his voice carrying the formal cadence of diplomatic greeting. "On behalf of the Terran Coalition and Horizon Prime, we welcome the Vexery delegation. We hope this marks the beginning of lasting friendship between our peoples." The lead Vexery moved forward with that same liquid grace. When she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality that made Aya's breath catch. "I am Commander Rena of the Vexery Diplomatic Corps," she said, her command of standard impressive despite the slight accent that colored her words. "We are honored to be received with such warmth. We come seeking understanding and mutual benefit." The formal introductions continued, each member of the delegation being presented. Aya noticed that Commander Rena's attention kept drifting back to her, even as she spoke with Captain Chen and the other senior officers. Finally, Chen gestured toward Aya. "Commander, this is Dr. Aya Osman, our xenolinguist. She will be your primary liaison during your stay." Aya stepped forward, her heart hammering. Up close, she could see the subtle variations in Rena's purple skin, the way light seemed to move beneath the surface. She bowed slightly, the gesture of respect she'd learned from the cultural briefings. "Commander Rena," she said carefully in Vexery, the syllables feeling strange on her tongue, "it is an honor to meet you. I hope my pronunciation is acceptable." Something remarkable happened. Rena's skin, that beautiful deep purple, suddenly flushed darker, almost indigo, spreading from her cheeks down her neck. The silver patterns across her skin began to pulse with a soft light. Her companions exchanged quick glances, their expressions unreadable. "Your pronunciation is more than acceptable," Rena replied, switching back to standard, her voice slightly rougher than before. "It is quite impressive for someone who has learned from transmissions alone." Their eyes held for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Aya felt heat rising in her own cheeks, wondering what the color change meant in Vexery culture. Was it embarrassment? Pleasure? Anger? She made a mental note to research it immediately. "I look forward to working with you, Dr. Osman," Rena continued, and Aya could have sworn there was something beneath the formal words, something warm and almost uncertain. "Please, call me Aya," she heard herself say. Rena's skin darkened another shade, "Then you must call me Rena." As the delegation was led away to their quarters, Aya found herself unable to look away from Rena's retreating form. Something had passed between them in that brief exchange, something that went beyond diplomatic protocol. Whatever it was, Aya knew her time on Horizon Prime had just become infinitely more complicated, and infinitely more interesting. The invitation. The following days passed in a blur of diplomatic meetings and cultural exchanges. Aya found herself constantly in Commander Rena's presence, translating nuances, explaining human customs, and learning about Vexary society in return. What struck her most was how often she caught Rena watching her when she thought Aya wasn't looking, those luminous eyes tracking her movements across conference rooms and observation decks. The Vexary commander was brilliant, articulate, and surprisingly curious about the smallest details of human life. She asked about Earth's oceans, about music, about the way humans expressed affection. Each conversation left Aya wanting more, wanting to know the person beneath the diplomatic mask. It was during one of these exchanges, in the station's botanical garden, that things shifted. Aya had been explaining how certain Earth plants required specific light cycles when she noticed Rena had stopped listening. The commander stood perfectly still, her attention fixed on a cluster of violet orchids that reminded Aya of Rena's own skin tone. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Aya said softly, moving to stand beside her. "They remind me of home," Rena replied, her voice carrying an unexpected note of longing. "We have flowers similar to these, though ours sing when the wind passes through them." "Sing," Aya breathed, enchanted by the image. Rena turned to face her, and in the soft light of the garden, her skin seemed to glow from within. The silver patterns across her neck pulsed gently. "Aya, there is something I wish to ask you. Something personal, not diplomatic." Aya's pulse quickened. "Of course, anything." "Among my people, we have a practice called the resonance binding," Rena began, her words careful and measured. "It is performed between individuals who wish to establish deeper understanding, to create harmony between their energies. It is meant to strengthen bonds of trust and mutual respect. I've read brief mentions of bonding ceremonies in the preliminary cultural reports," Aya said, her academic interest immediately engaged, "but nothing detailed. Is this something typically done between diplomats?" Rena's skin flushed that darker indigo shade again, the color spreading across her shoulders. "It can be, yes. Though it is more commonly performed between," she paused, seeming to search for the right words, "between those who seek to know each other beyond surface formality." Something in the way Rena said it made Aya's stomach flip. This wasn't just about diplomacy. She could sense it in the tremor beneath Rena's otherwise steady voice, in the way the commander's hands were clasped tightly together as if to keep them from shaking. "You want to perform this ceremony with me," Aya said, making it a statement rather than a question. "I do," Rena confirmed, her eyes meeting Aya's with an intensity that stole breath. "If you are willing. I understand it is unusual, and you may need time to consider." "Yes," Aya interrupted, surprising herself with the immediacy of her response, "I'm willing. I would be honored, actually." Rena's entire form seemed to brighten, the silver patterns dancing across her skin with obvious pleasure. "Truly?" "Truly," Aya confirmed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "When would we do this?" "Tomorrow evening, if that suits you," Rena said. "There is a meditation chamber on level 9 that my people have prepared for such purposes. The ceremony requires privacy and," she hesitated again, "an openness of spirit." "Should I prepare in any specific way?" Aya asked. "Are there protocols I need to follow, things I should study?" Rena stepped closer, close enough that Aya could see the subtle way her skin shifted between shades of purple, like watching storm clouds move across a summer sky. "Simply come as yourself. The ceremony asks only for honesty, for willingness to be vulnerable. It requires nothing more than your presence and your trust." The word vulnerable hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Aya realized this wasn't going to be some formal diplomatic ritual. This was something intimate, something that would require her to drop her professional guards. "I trust you," Aya said quietly, and meant it completely. Something flickered across Rena's features, an emotion too complex to name. Her hand lifted, hovering in the space between them as if she wanted to touch Aya's face but was restraining herself. "I will do my utmost to honor that trust." They stood there in the garden, surrounded by earth plants and alien flowers, the distance between them feeling both vast and insignificant. Aya wanted to ask what the color changes meant, wanted to know if Rena felt the same pull she did, the same inexplicable connection that had sparked the moment they'd met. "Tomorrow evening then," Aya finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow evening," Rena agreed, Level 9, Chamber 3. "Come at sunset, or what passes for sunset here among the stars." As Rena turned to leave, Aya noticed the commander's hands were trembling slightly. She wondered if Rena could hear how hard her own heart was beating, wondered if the Vexry commander knew she'd spent the last 3 nights lying awake thinking about those luminous eyes and that melodic voice. Whatever this resonance binding was, whatever it would reveal, Aya knew with absolute certainty that after tomorrow evening, nothing between them would be the same. She watched Rena disappear through the garden entrance, the purple figure moving like liquid grace, and felt something in her chest tighten with anticipation and a hope she didn't dare name yet. The orchids beside her seemed to lean closer, as if they too sensed the significance of what had just transpired. Aya reached out to touch one delicate petal, thinking about flowers that sang in the wind, and wondering what other beautiful secrets Rena's world might hold. The ceremony begins. Aya stood outside Chamber 3, her hand hovering over the entry panel. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on something simple, a soft gray tunic and comfortable pants, nothing too formal or too casual. Her reflection in the polished metal beside the door showed someone nervous, excited, and trying very hard to appear calm. She pressed the panel. The door slid open with a whisper. The chamber had been completely transformed. Gone were the stark white walls and standard station furniture. In their place, Rena had created something that looked like it belonged on another world entirely. Crystalline structures hung from the ceiling, each one emitting a soft bioluminescent glow that painted the room in shades of blue and violet. The floor was covered in something that looked like moss but felt warm and yielding beneath Aya's feet. In the center of the room, cushions had been arranged in a circle, and there stood Rena. The Vexry commander wore something different from her usual formal attire. The garment was simple, sleeveless, made of material that seemed to flow like water with her slightest movement. It left her arms bare, and Aya could see the silver patterns that traced across Rena's skin were glowing more brightly than she'd ever seen them before. "Welcome," Rena said, her voice soft and warm. "Please, come in. Close the door behind you." Aya did as asked, and the chamber sealed with a gentle hiss. The air felt different here, thicker somehow, charged with something she couldn't quite name. She moved toward the center of the room, acutely aware of Rena's eyes following her every step. "This is beautiful," Aya said, turning slowly to take it all in. "Did you do all this yourself?" "With help from my companions," Rena replied, but there was a tremor in her voice that suggested nervousness. "I wanted it to feel right, to feel safe for both of us." They stood facing each other across the cushions, and Aya noticed what she'd seen in the garden. Rena's skin was already shifting to that darker indigo shade, the flush spreading across her cheeks and down her neck. The silver patterns pulsed in rhythm with what Aya suspected was Rena's heartbeat. "Are you all right?" Aya asked gently. "You seem nervous," Rena admitted, something vulnerable crossing her features. "More nervous than I should be. More nervous than I have ever been performing this ceremony before." "You've done this before," Aya said, feeling an unexpected twist of something that might have been jealousy. "Many times," Rena confirmed, moving around the cushions to stand closer to Aya. "It is part of my duties as a diplomatic liaison. I have performed the resonance binding with representatives from 7 different species." She paused, her eyes searching Aya's face, "but never have I felt like this." "Like what?" Aya whispered. Rena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured toward the cushions. "Please, sit. Let me show you." Aya lowered herself onto the indicated cushion, and Rena knelt before her, close enough that their knees almost touched. From somewhere in her flowing garment, Rena produced a small crystalline object that began to glow in response to her touch. The ceremony works through resonance, Rena explained, her hands moving with practiced grace as she prepared. Our bodies produce energy, emotions create frequencies. The binding allows those frequencies to harmonize, to understand each other on a level deeper than words. And the crystals? Aya asked, watching as more light began to emanate from the structures around them. They amplify and visualize the connection, Rena said, they make the invisible visible. They also, her voice dropped lower, reveal truth that cannot be hidden. Before Aya could ask what that meant, Rena reached out with both hands. May I touch you? The ceremony requires physical contact. Yes, Aya breathed. Rena's hand settled on Aya's shoulders, and the contact sent warmth flooding through her entire body. The Vexery's skin was warmer than she'd expected, and she could feel that same subtle vibration she'd noticed before, like a song humming just below the surface. Close your eyes, Rena instructed softly, breathe with me. Aya obeyed, letting her eyes drift shut. She focused on her breathing, on the feeling of Rena's hands on her shoulders, on the warmth spreading through her chest. She heard Rena begin to hum, a low melodic sound that seemed to resonate in Aya's bones. The light behind her eyelids changed. Even with her eyes closed, she could sense the crystals responding, growing brighter. Rena's hands began to move, sliding from her shoulders to her collarbones, then up to cradle the sides of her neck. Each touch sent little sparks of sensation through Aya's nervous system. Open your eyes, Rena whispered. When Aya did, she gasped. The entire chamber was alive with light. Strands of bioluminescent energy floated in the air between them, responding to their proximity, weaving patterns that pulsed and shifted. But it was Rena who truly stole her breath. The Vexery commander's skin had transformed. Instead of the deep purple Aya had grown accustomed to, Rena now glowed with shades of indigo, violet, and something that looked almost pink. The colors rippled across her skin like waves, and the silver patterns blazed bright enough to cast shadows. Rena, Aya breathed, you're glowing. I know, Rena said, and her voice cracked with emotion. Aya, I need to tell you something. Something I should have explained before we began. Confessions in the light. The luminescent strands danced between them, growing brighter with each passing moment. Rena's hands trembled where they rested against Aya's neck, her touch gentle but unmistakably intimate. Among my people, Rena began, her voice barely steady, the resonance binding is meant to be performed with complete emotional neutrality. When done properly, our skin remains its natural purple shade, the energy strands glow white and calm, creating bonds of professional respect and nothing more. Aya's heart began to race, understanding slowly dawning, but yours isn't purple anymore. No, Rena whispered, her luminous eyes filling with something that looked like fear and hope tangled together. When a Vexery performs this ceremony while harboring personal feelings, while experiencing attraction or affection, the colors change, they reveal what we try to hide. The indigo flush deepened across Rena's features, spreading down her shoulders and arms, the silver patterns pulsed faster now, matching Aya's own quickening heartbeat. The energy strands had shifted from white to violet to deep rose, weaving around them both in increasingly complex patterns. What do the colors mean? Aya asked, though part of her already knew. Rena's composure finally cracked, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. They mean I have been dishonest with you, not in my words, but in my intentions. I told you this was about diplomatic understanding, about building professional trust. She drew a shaking breath. But the truth is I have watched you for weeks, Aya, from the moment you spoke to me in my own language, your eyes so bright with genuine curiosity. I have been unable to think of anything else. Rena. Please, let me finish, Rena interrupted, her hands sliding down to grip Aya's. I thought I could perform this ceremony and satisfy my need to be close to you while maintaining proper boundaries. I thought I was disciplined enough, strong enough to keep my feelings hidden. A sad laugh escaped her. I was wrong, everything I feel is written across my skin for you to see. The energy strands responded to her confession, flaring brilliant pink before settling into deep magenta. they wrapped around both women now, creating a cocoon of light that pulsed with each shared breath. Aya stared at Rena, at this brilliant, beautiful being who was trembling before her, vulnerable in ways that transcended species. She thought about the past weeks, about how her own heart had jumped every time Rena entered a room, how she'd found excuses to extend their meetings. "You're not the only one who's been dishonest," Aya said quietly. Rena's eyes widened, hope flickering across her features. "I've been telling myself this was just fascination," Aya continued, academic interest in an alien culture, professional admiration for a skilled diplomat. She squeezed Rena's hands, feeling the warmth radiating from purple skin, "but that's not what this is. Every time you look at me, every time you smile, every time your skin changes color and I wonder what you're feeling, I want to know, not as a scientist, not as a liaison, just as someone who cannot stop thinking about you." A sound escaped Rena that was half laugh, half sob. "Truly?" "Truly," Aya confirmed. "I see the way you stop to touch plants in the garden because you miss your home, the way you close your eyes when you listen to music, the way you've been patient with my terrible pronunciation." She paused, gathering courage. "I want more than professional meetings and diplomatic exchanges." The strands around them exploded with color, shifting through every shade of pink and violet and gold. Rena's skin had become radiant, glowing with shades Aya had never seen before. "This complicates everything," Rena whispered, but she was leaning closer. "I know," Aya replied. "My assignment here is temporary, there are protocols." "Do you want to stop?" Aya asked. Rena closed her eyes, leaning into Aya's touch. "No," she breathed, "I have wanted this, wanted you, since the moment you smiled at me in the docking bay." "Then don't stop," Aya whispered. Rena's eyes opened, luminous with emotion. Slowly, she leaned forward until their foreheads touched. The contact sent warmth through both of them, and the energy strands tightened, responding to the resonance building between two hearts that had found each other across the darkness of space. "I am terrified," Rena confessed. "So am I," Aya admitted, "but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone." Choosing tomorrow. Time seemed to lose meaning in their luminous cocoon. The energy strands had settled into a gentle rhythm, pulsing in time with their synchronized breathing. Rena's hands moved from Aya's face to her shoulders, then down her arms, leaving trails of warmth everywhere she touched. "The ceremony is not yet complete," Rena said softly, her voice still thick with emotion. "There is a final portion, the declaration of intent." "What does that mean?" Aya asked, her thumb tracing small circles on Rena's wrist. "Both participants must speak aloud what they wish this bond to become," Rena explained. "The energy responds by creating a pattern unique to that connection. Once spoken, once the pattern is set, it becomes permanent, a marker of what passed between us that cannot be undone." The weight of those words settled over them. This wasn't just about acknowledging feelings anymore, it was about choosing a path forward despite all the complications, despite the temporary nature of Rena's assignment, despite the protocols and expectations of both their peoples. "What would you speak," Aya asked quietly, "if you chose to complete it?" Rena's glow deepened, the purple of her skin shifting towards something richer, warmer. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute truth. "I would speak of wanting to know you beyond these formal exchanges, of wishing to share not just cultural knowledge, but personal truths, the small joys and quiet sorrows that make us who we are." She paused, gathering courage, "of hoping that whatever time we have, we might spend it as more than colleagues, as two people who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway." Aya's heart felt too large for her chest. "Then that would be my intention too," she said, "to know the woman behind the diplomat, to share the parts of myself I keep hidden, to explore what this connection could become without letting fear dictate our choices." The strands around them began to move with renewed purpose, responding to their spoken intentions. Rena shifted closer, releasing one of Aya's hands to gesture at the energy, guiding it with intricate movements. "Then let us complete it," Rena whispered, "let us choose this together." She began to weave the strands again, but everything had changed. Where before her movements had been controlled and formal, now they were tender, almost reverent. She drew the light around Aya like an embrace, letting it settle against her shoulders, her chest, near her heart. Each touch of Rena's fingers as she worked was deliberate, intimate. The energy responded not just to Rena now, but to Aya as well. It brightened when their eyes met, pulsed when their hands brushed together, created spirals of color that reflected both their emotions. "Tell me about your homeworld," Aya said softly as Rena worked, wanting to know everything. Rena's expression softened. "The skies are violet at dawn, and our cities are built into living crystal formations that sing when wind passes through them." Her hands never stopped moving, weaving patterns of light. "There are gardens where flowers bloom only at night, their petals glowing like stars. I used to walk through them when I needed to think, to find peace." "It sounds beautiful," Aya breathed. "Perhaps one day I could show you," Rena said, then caught herself, "if such a thing were possible." "Why wouldn't it be?" Aya challenged gently. Rena's hands stilled. "Because I am a diplomat on a temporary assignment, because interspecies relationships are complicated, because my people would have concerns, as would yours." "Do you care what they think?" Aya asked. Rena looked at her, really looked at her, and something fierce came into her eyes. "Not as much as I should," she admitted, "not when the alternative is walking away from this, from you, pretending I feel nothing." The strands flared brighter in response to her conviction. They began to weave themselves into a pattern neither woman was consciously directing, spiraling outward in increasingly complex designs that seemed to tell a story, the story of two souls finding each other against impossible odds. Aya reached up, cupping Rena's face with both hands, feeling the warmth there, the rapid pulse of life beneath purple skin. "Then don't walk away," she said, "stay, for as long as you can, let's figure out the complications together." "It will not be easy," Rena warned, but she was leaning into Aya's touch. "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Aya replied. "There will be questions, concerns, obstacles. Then we'll face them," Aya interrupted, "together." Rena's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because suddenly she was smiling, a genuine, radiant smile that made her entire being seem to glow from within. "Together," she repeated, as if testing how the word felt. The energy strands completed their pattern, creating something breathtaking, a mandala of light that encompassed them both, binding them in ways that went beyond the physical. The crystals hanging from the ceiling sang a harmonic note that resonated in their bones, sealing the bond they had chosen. Slowly, carefully, Rena leaned in, her lips brushed against Aya's forehead, then her cheek, gentle touches that felt like promises. Aya's breath caught, her heart racing as Rena's face hovered near hers, close enough that she could see the individual patterns dancing across purple skin. "Is this acceptable in human custom?" Rena whispered, her breath warm against Aya's lips. "Yes," Aya breathed, "very acceptable." When their lips met, it was gentle at first, tentative, two beings learning each other's language through touch, but as the kiss deepened, as Rena's arms wrapped around Aya and pulled her closer, it became something more, a conversation without words, a promise sealed in warmth and light and the steady pulse of two hearts beating in synchrony. The energy around them flared brilliantly before settling into a soft, steady glow. The ceremony was complete, the bond was sealed. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they would face them together. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Rena's skin glowed with colors Aya suspected were rare even among her people, a brilliant display of joy and wonder and love just beginning to bloom. "What happens now?" Aya asked, her voice soft. Rena smiled, that beautiful, open smile that made Aya's heart skip. "Now we begin," she said simply. "We learn each other, we navigate complications, we write a story that has never been written before."